Okay, welcome back. This is part two of our Designing a Campaign special event. At this point, we have gotten through all of the basic, the first 5 steps are done. We are starting to design the individual set pieces. We know our beginning, we know the first scene of our first act of the structure, where our guys are coming up on the town, and we are going to progress from there. So again, if you haven't seen the rest of it, watch the other video first, then come back to this one. There's also a link on the other video that has the finished document that we're working on. So we have come up on the caravan. We've had sort of a tax, a toll road type event, and now we're moving on to the next scene that happens within the first one. So CM, we're at you again. What would be the next thing once they get through the toll?
Uh, just a quick question. The toll was in fact the entrance to the town, or was it more like an actual toll upon the road?
It would have been, yeah, out on the road somewhere.
Out of the road, okay. So I would say that the next scene we would need to introduce to perhaps show the Circle of Magi. So perhaps while they travel along the road, they come upon a fairly large cemetery, with people there mourning their loved ones, and so on and so forth. And they would see that these strange-looking men, women dressed in robes, this kind of the sight of a stereotypical or prototypical magi, and they would be putting spells of protection or blessings upon the graves, to hasten their loved ones' trip to the afterlife, if such a thing existed in the world, or to just protect the gravesite of these people's loved ones as sort of a service, a goodwill project towards the community. But then they would also see a few magi interacting with the local peasantry, and they wouldn't be the nicest people. They would be, kind of arrogant, kind of snotty. They would perhaps engage in a dialogue with the PCs, and they would show off a slight bit of arrogance. Maybe the pupil of the main bad guy, the second evil force, would be there as a part of his training. Something like that they could get introduced to the Circle of Magi and what they're kind of about.
Ah, I like that. Especially bringing the people in. We start to establish, we give them a character that they can tie themselves into. Now, when we think about this within the event, of course, we're showing them more information, and they were shown information in the first scene, and then they're going to get a little bit more role play, a little bit more exploration. They need to have what I would call a social encounter, something to happen, and I see it very much happening with the pupil. The pupil sees, he's very, despite being young, looking naive, he's perhaps involved with this, people mourning the loved ones thing. He sees that people are in his town that he's not used to, that seem like foreigners. He's going to be investigating them as well. So what kind of conflict do you see arising between the pupil and the PCs?
Well, that's to say that the people would recognize them as outsiders by their dress or by their look, or, perhaps he was quite social and never seen them before. And he would wonder what they were doing here, because they're not a part of the Merchants Guild, because they're not trafficking anything, and they're not from the town itself because they're not coming out, they're coming in. So he would be kind of curious as to why these people would be just traveling upon the road at this certain time. As to the fact that why.
Yeah, we can certainly see why that he would be interested in investigate, but we need some kind of direct. Okay, he's going to talk to them. We know the PCs are probably going to try and be a little bit vague. They're not going to completely be forthcoming with why they're there, or they might. But what would this pupil? What would he ultimately try and do with him in a very more sort of broad sense? Would he be interested in setting them up to, talk to them later, perhaps inviting them to a dinner or an event that's happening in town? Or would he be more interested in immediately kicking them out of town and be like, hey, you need to go check in with the guards? What would he needs to directly, with a social conflict, he needs to directly interact and call action to the PCs, either inviting them to do something or acting upon them or telling them? How do you think that the pupil's reaction to them would be?
Well, I would see that he would be, in fact, perhaps inviting at first, because he could always use new subjects if he were to perhaps start using his power of the dead to test upon them, or to perhaps run thuggish missions for himself to set himself up to start this coup that he would eventually be going into. So he would try to use them as tools, or to try to use them against those that he would, or against his enemies.
Okay. 100 people, and then so you say inviting. Give me specifically now. Okay, we know from a general sense he'd be inviting. How would he want to invite them out?
Well, he would think of them as kind of roguish, kind of brutish, because he's never seen them before. So he'd invite them over for a drink, perhaps to, get them loose, get them a bit lucid. Trying to talk him into his plans. Perhaps he could try to work some magic while they're over there to perhaps make them more suggestible to his opinions in that way. So to get them more loose at first, to get them to drop their guard, and then to perhaps take advantage of them.
Okay, so run that by me one more time. We want to. It says invite them to something.
He would invite them out for a drink to say, drop their guard, get them to loosen up, to see him as someone who is just a pupil of the Magi. He's not as arrogant. He's not as snotty. That type of thing. To make them drop their guard.
And I like that on the pretense that he's going to tell them about the Magi, and that will get them to come.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, one of the other things is PCs are generally against. I should say PCs. Players are generally against being told, "Hey, come here. Now you have to come here." What I've found in the past that works really, really good is meet me here at this time. And that way it will give them time to do something else and then come back to him to process the information, to allow the players to not be told, hey, you have to come here now, but that they will go on their own because he's the one that's the source of that information. And he has information that most other people don't have. So I like that, but what I'm going to put the caveat on it is at a later time. So, meet me tonight at such and such place for dinner. And this will give the PCs time to go and do something else first, and they won't feel directly pulled from one thing to another. So that takes us to our third scene, and we are at Malak. Now, we have had the PCs have come into town. We've dealt with the tax thing. They came in. There's the mourning people, the loved ones. We've established the pupil. He's invited them out to dinner. What's the next thing that happens?
I would like to indirectly introduce the group to the Assassination Guild, the Brotherhood of Shadows, through happening upon certain circumstances that they weren't intending on.
I will actually say, and we'll see it's actually step 8 that we are going to worry about the Assassination Guild. They are going to be almost solely something that is done after we make all these scenes, and they should never be almost directly involved in a scene.
It's very what's the term? It's very indirect in the sense. Like they hear the PCs hear a scream, a blood-curdled scream coming from somewhere. They go to investigate. They see a man standing over another man with a dagger in the bloody dagger in his hand, and the other man seems to be lying on the ground with a slit throat. And then the man who had apparently caused that immediately runs. Either runs into the shadows and disappears, or just disappears right there. And this is sort of later on in the night, possibly before they actually are about to, or maybe they they take a night off. No, not that they take a night off. No.
No. I actually keep that in your mind. Actually, I think I'm going to steal it when I get the next scene. But I know exactly how to incorporate that, and I'm actually going to incorporate that in the next scene. So I actually really like what you're doing with it, and when I do the next scene, I'll show you exactly how to incorporate that type of event.
All right.
So. Not to derail what you had going on, but we're thinking a scene that is an hour of gameplay.
Perhaps showing a conflict between the Magi and the Region Guards within the town?
Okay.
Like one that either nearly goes to blows or does go to blows, depending on how the PCs take it.
And I will say, at this point, we are probably halfway through first play session, and no one has gone to combat yet. Which, of course, not every system is for, but a lot of people do want. So we haven't had combat. So yeah, spell out the scene for me.
Perhaps the regional guards are wishing to found some magi that haven't paid the tax, and the magi disagree with the tax and find it distasteful. Therefore, they have no interest in paying it, and it looks like they're about to go to blows, and the PCs have the option of either mediating the conflict or supporting a side, which might potentially introduce them to the factions later on.
Okay.
Like perhaps establish a reputation with the factions earlier in the act.
Now, the one thing we never want to do is we never want to allow the PCs or assume the PCs will take action because they are good or because action's happening. Their motivation is to investigate. And they see a battle between two forces. They might get involved, they might not get involved, they might leave it alone. It needs to directly involve the PCs. Like we see the mourned loved ones that come in. They're going to go in, it's sort of a passing thing, but then the pupil jumps out and grabs them. You know, it's oh, who are you people? What are you doing here? Let's have a conversation. How can we, within that scene, which I think is a good scene, how do we directly make it so that the PCs are involved in it and don't have a choice? Not their own motivation, but that they, you know, well, either they are directly motivated to be involved with it, which is going to be hard to do as they don't really know anyone other than the pupil at this point. So how do they get mixed up in the scene to establish this direct militant conflict?
Perhaps there was a large crowd outside of an area they were hoping to get into, and upon going through the crowd, they noticed the conflict looking like it's about to come to blows. To the point where a lot of people in that crowd watching could either get hurt or some damage could be put on the property of the area that they're heading to.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of conflict, but again, I want it more direct. I mean, how about the guards are actively, essentially, rounding up the crowd for some reason, as in, you're here, you're not allowed to leave. And the PCs are within that group of there's nothing you can do, you know, shy of coming to blows with the guards, but it's telling them, you know, we are forcing action upon you. Now you're invested in the story because now your body's involved in the story. It's not, you know, happenstance. It's not we want to protect the town because we're protecting the town. It is, okay, something's happening to us. Now we have to do something about it. So I like the idea of the conflict between the two. And I mean, again, we're telling political stories don't have to start slow. We can have actually come to blows between the Magi and the guards in conflict, and then the PCs are in a middle of a battle where they have already been, you know, sort of shuffled around and, you know, beaten up. And now the interesting thing is we're opposing more and more the guards as the villains here, which are the lawful good. So that's kind of the thought.
Oh, I got it.
Okay, shoot it.
It's perhaps they were going to interview maybe interview one of the members of the caravan that is apparently still had arrived in the town but is not was not able to send back a report, and perhaps he is caught in the middle of this conflict.
Aha.
Perhaps the regional guards are requiring him to pay a tax because the caravan was had somehow managed to get past it, and the Magi might be defending him.
So now we have this. So what we need to do is we'll go ahead and establish that in scene 2, that the pupil will tell them, because it would be logical that the players would ask the pupil about the missing caravan, or that people had gone missing, and he could make reference to that there was one, you know, survivor.
And I actually have a good way of bringing up this. I think this might work with my NPC plan later down the road, depending on how things turn out.
Okay.
Because I wanted to introduce a PC through some sort of potential conflict that relates back to the story, but also establishes the character of that NPC. And I feel like this could potentially do it if we're just going to have it go straight to blows regardless of what happens.
Yeah, within scene 3, because we need a little bit of action, we are going to have, okay, so the PCs go to interview this surviving member that they referenced. And what happens is then the guards start rounding everyone up. Why are the guards rounding everyone up? We need a motivation for that.
Like rounding up the crowd, or rounding up these particular group of people?
Oh, okay, that's right. We could just have the guards take the one surviving guy.
Yeah.
And why would they be doing that?
Because perhaps he is a smuggler, and the caravan was smuggled in through means that were not legal for the region guards to allow. Like perhaps he disguised it as a caravan. Like the NPC that I intend to create is more of a roguish character, so I would assume he'd have more of an indirect approach of getting this caravan in without having to deal with the tax.
Well, we're not worried about the NPCs yet, because you won't even get to choose how your NPC specifically gets implemented. That's for later on, so don't worry about that yet. But I like the idea that the PCs are going to go interview this guy. The guards are taking them, and I like the concept of we want to not necessarily keep adding complexity to the story. We have a lot of complexity. Let's keep tying it in. We know that the head of the Legion is lawful good. He's trying to find out about this dark magic that's going on. Perhaps he wants this member of the caravan just so he can interrogate him.
Yeah, like perhaps this member of the caravan is suspected of a crime.
I want specifically because, again, we don't want to keep adding complexity. We want to tie the complexity we already have, keep tying it back into the story. And our overarching story is that we have PCs that are, or I'm sorry, we have the Region Lord is suspicious of the Circle of Magi for doing dark magic. So he's trying to find evidence about that. We have a caravan that went missing with one surviving member. He wants that caravan member so he can interrogate him on what happened there. And that ties the complexity we've already established back into the story and keeps weaving it through the whole story. And that's what we want to go for. We want to have that. And at this point, we don't really ever want to create more complexity. Just keep tying back in what we've already established, looking for connections with what we're doing. So I like that. And then ultimately what's going to happen is the Magi are trying to protect their knowledge, and we're assuming something probably bad has happened when we're talking about cults and raising the dead with this caravan. So they are trying to keep this person in their town.
Yeah, perhaps the Magi.
That's how actual conflict occurs.
Perhaps this merchant knew what was being transported, and as a result, the guards have reason to believe that whatever was being transported ties back to the Magi working with the merchants.
Yeah, I think what we now is a good staple, a good motivation for what we have going on. The Magi, that they want to keep him, and it results in conflict. Our characters need to talk to him to do their investigation, so they have an active interest, and combat's going to occur. And at this point, they don't really know who's good and bad, so they're going to have to make a choice on who they want to support. Now, the question in going into scene 4, which is now my scene, is how do we want to handle this? Because there's multiple options for the way scene 3 is going to play out. The players could not get involved at all, and if the players don't get involved at all right, and because it's still your scene, let's say if the players do not get involved at all, what happens? What is the outcome?
Then they...
Do the guards win and haul him away, or do the Magi win and keep him?
I think both sides. The conflict ends with both sides pretty much beating each other into a stalemate, but the merchant gets away. Or the merchant worker, the smuggler, who I'm assuming would, the person I'm assuming who would be a smuggler would get away. Merchant escort. Yeah. Again, he's not really much of a merchant. More like the person involved with the caravan escapes.
Right. So if the players not get involved, they escape. Now, what happens if the players, and this is good, we're giving players choice, players side with the Magi?
Then the Magi defeat the regional guards, and they have a better reputation with the Magi. So maybe the Magi, in cooperation, allow them to speak with the caravan member.
Okay, but the Magi are. Remember, the Magi are the bad guys, and what is the bad guys' motivation? They are actively trying to protect their information and move quickly.
Okay, in that case, then, if we're going to assume that these Magi were working with these other sects and not just the regular Magi, then maybe they don't allow them to talk to the merchant. Not the merchant, the merchant's employee, but the merchant's employee eventually ends up meeting them in an inn or perhaps in another location as they're walking out. They somehow get connected to him through his own volition.
Okay. What I would see happening pretty much is the Magi, if they're trying to protect it, to what you say, not necessarily the merchant escapes, but the merchant, is essentially hauled off by the Magi, and they are keeping him, hidden away for some reason.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe perhaps they find evidence that leads them to that conclusion.
Right. So then finally the player side with the guards, what happens?
Then the guards win the battle. They end up capturing the merchant, and the lawful guard understands that these men are working on an investigation. So as a lawful person, he asks that he conduct his interview first, but then eventually allows these NPCs to speak with the merchant's employee, smuggler person. So he lets them know the information of what he has.
Perfect. Okay, so that's our scene 3. So no matter what happens after this, the players are going to have to go and find and talk with the merchant. Whether the merchant ran and fled, whether the merchant's under the protection of the guards, whether he's under the captiveness of the Magi, they're going to have to find him. But for right now, the players do not have access to him, but they have a dinner to go to, which takes us to Scene 4, and we'll notice Scene 4 is the finale of our first play session. So, of course, we're back to me in designing this. It's going to be dinner, and at dinner, stuff needs to happen. We have had, a little bit of intrigue. We're building up the scene. They're going to roleplay their characters. We get a slight taste of combat, but now we really need something to have it happen to establish what is going on here. They're going to meet him for dinner, and meet the people for dinner. And we're going to say it is, because the one thing is our pupil is very, very young, very unassuming. He's going to tell them about the Circle of Magi. And he is going to, Magi, and he's going to keep asking them why they're there. He's also going to, okay, I'm sort of working through this. I'm getting excited for our little finale scene here. Because what's going to happen is, again, we need to establish that there is necromancy going on. We need to get this. We need to some kind of combat. We are literally going to have the person who died in the graveyard earlier stumble back through the door. Walk through. Perhaps those prayer spells that they were putting on weren't exactly as well intentioned. She's going to stumble back through the guard, and she is going to specifically attack the pupil.
So it's not going to end like on a cliffhanger where the zombie just walks in and everybody's freaking out?
Oh, no. Our cliffhanger is all the stuff that we've established beyond this. We want to give them resolution. No, they're going to come through the door. They're going to attack the pupil. But see, we need sort of more than that happening. We need other zombies to attack. We need to see the necromancer. They need to start coming up through the floorboards. So underneath, because I'm going to say that they picked an establishment that was right sort of overlooking this graveyard, good scenery. But yeah, we're going to have more zombies come up through the floorboard, and then we're going to have an actual combat. Now, how this is going to end, we're going to allow the players to go through, do their full, combat, let them fight, let them roll die, let them defeat the zombies, let them do that whole process. But what's going to ultimately occur is we need something at the end to then hint at something a lot bigger is going on. And how we do this is I just had this wonderful thought that this bar is essentially where the circle of magi go, and all of these other figures sitting at the bar are actually the circle. And at the end of the combat, and throughout the combat, we'll see the zombies aren't messing with anyone other than these and the pupil. And what happens is at the end of the combat, essentially the other members of the circle stand up, purify the area, blast all the bits, as it were. Or no, they're cultists. They want to summon undead. They don't want to kill a bunch of bodies. No, they actively start taking the bodies someplace else. They're picking up the bodies. They're taking them with them. They're saying, we will handle this. Wink, wink. So that's where we end our first play session. It gives them a big combat. We had a zombie stumble through the door. We had ones come up through the floorboards, attacking the people. We've given them mystery, and then we've given them a, wait a second, what's actually going on here? Clearly a lot more than just a missing cart, because this is the first time we've actually established the necromancy. We've established that, and that's our first season finale. So the next thing that we're going to do is we need to check the 8 kinds of fun. We need to see what actually we've done through this. And now, we've done most of it, and for the sake of time, because we have taken a fair amount of time to get through these scenes, we'll actually do it on one of the later ones. I think we did pretty good with that. But at this point, you would go through and check and make sure that all of your 8 kinds of fun are established. But we're going to move through and sort of see how that works at the end. So now we go to Act 2. This is where everything starts going right for the PCs. We understand, to a degree, this world we live in. We've established the conflict that's going on. We've established the necromancy. We've met our villain. We see a lot of stuff that's going on. Now things need to start going right for the PCs as far as they need to progress with how the story's going. So we are back to CM. So starting off from where we left off, what are the PCs doing now? And the PCs are going to be largely successful through most of this act.
Right. So, coming off the finale of that last scene, they're obviously very confused of what's going on. So, they would, start going out, starting to ask about strange happenings going on and what's with the necromancy, and they would come upon somebody who would ask their help to, since they were saying they were investigating, they would ask their help to investigate something that has happened with a loved one of theirs that has passed away, but they discovered that their tomb is empty, that their grave is empty, that they're not there anymore. So the PCs would start going about, investigate that site, and what they would find is, or what they could possibly find if they decided to investigate it, is that 2 minor members of the Circle of Magi, not exactly cultists, they were kind of like, say, cultist initiates, like trying to get into the subsect, as it were, and they were trying to, they exhumed one body and they were trying to raise it to, prove that they had the capacity and magical capability to do this. So the PCs could stop them before they did it, and return the body to the family, and they would be very thankful, and they'd get a good reputation for that. Or they would be a little bit later, and the body would be raised, and they would have to, kill this loved one and have to go back and tell the family about that, and they would have the choice of reporting these 2 minor magi as to, they were performing necromancy, or do we not get involved and just let them run off?
Okay, I like this. I want to talk to them specifically about what you have just presented, because it is a very good way to present this, and that is what we are establishing is a scene where two magi, essentially perhaps within the circle, are raising, in undead, that there is a body, and the players are essentially going to stumble across this, and it works very well because we don't know where the players are going to go from here. there's a bunch of different geographical directions they could head. They could go, at this point, they could try and track down the merchant. They could try and go talk to the circle. They could talk to the pupil. They could go up and try and talk to, the region lord. There's a bunch of different geographically places that they can go. And the great thing is, this is what we call a floating event. This event can occur anywhere. The battle scene might be a little bit different, sure. But the fact is, we can have this fight that's going to happen because we know the players are going to have an issue because they've been attacked by zombies. Within their conscious and to a large degree their subconscious, zombies and necromancy now means bad. Not just we understand necromancy is bad, as in we have been attacked by zombies. Someone doing this needs to be stopped. And because the necromancers are doing it, they're trying to protect the information. Anyone who stumbles across their thing is going to be directly attacked. So what we do is we sort of take whatever direction the PCs go. We don't worry about geographically where it happens, but we know this fight is what's going to occur next. And that is how sort of a linear plot works when we talk about sandbox. We're not saying the players have to go to this warehouse or this dungeon and find these cultists. But the next scene is going to be cultists raising a undead and them having to fight it. Wherever that happens is sort of the player's choice, but they're going to stumble into the same result no matter what. So I wanted to sort of stop and make that point, but I do think that's a good scene. It also establishes, that the Magi are involved with this raising of the dead. Okay, and because everything's going right, this is going to be a combat where the players are going to win. Now, there's really not going to be anything left, because once they win, there's, pretty much they're dead. The Magi aren't going to live. If they try and take one alive, you just allow it to die or take a suicide pill or what have you. You just completely kill them all and allow them to fight, and then the players are going to go, okay, we had our suspicions at the end of the first play session. Starting out with the second play session, there's no question the Magi are raising the dead. And that pupil, I don't know if he's good, I don't know if he's bad, he's sort of a wild card, but the Magi are raising the dead. So this will take us back to Malak. So now this has just occurred. We just had this combat happen. They're going to continue about their investigation now. What's the next scene? I mean, I would strongly suspect that from this point, because the players are going to feel a little bit uneasy that they don't have a home, they're going to go looking for that merchant that was taken earlier. So what do you see the next scene playing out?
I see the next scene revolving more around discovering the merchant and finding out what had happened in regards to his involvement. And if we could go about it as if the PCs had found him, like maybe if the regional lords won, then he's still in prison. If the Magi won, then they find clues towards locating where he's being held captive. If he just got away, they can just meet him in a bar. Like they just stumble upon him drinking somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, and that's perfect, and it worked very, very well. Again, no matter what, the PCs made the choice of what happens to them. They feel they impacted the world, but no matter what, they're going to ultimately go and find him. It's just a matter of where that they find him. So I like all of that stuff. So they're going to find and talk to the merchant. Again, in this entire act, what we're trying to establish is the PCs are doing well. They are getting information. Things are progressing in their way. So when they talk with this merchant, what information are they going to get with him? From him, I should say. Well, because they're going to find out what's happened with the caravan. They're going to find out stuff. What information do you think the merchant would give them at this point?
I think he would inform them about perhaps rumors of the head. Maybe not rumors. No, he would inform them of what happened, being that the caravan on the way over was ambushed by some people, possibly some Magi, because they were using some magical powers, and they simply killed everybody there. He somehow managed to survive, and they recovered a particular item, and he's not really sure what it was or what it did. He was just hired to get the caravan to that area. From that area to get a caravan from point A to point B. So he's not really sure in that regard. But he has also heard rumors, or maybe he saw the head Magi there recovering the item.
Okay, yeah, and I like that. We haven't really incorporated him much yet, other than he was probably present in our bar scene. But the head magi was the one I would say that directly attacked them. Will establish his power that he could overpower an entire group of merchants. I mean, they're not the most combat heavy, but for him to single-handedly do that, we start seeing the power that he had, the power of what he could do. So I really like that concept that he reveals that. We have the mysterious McGovern, that's involved, that has been taken, so it gives them, sort of curiosity involved with that. I feel that he needs to still reveal more information to them. We need to, they now know what's happened to the caravan. Now they need to get sort of more to the other piece of the information. So what could he also reveal about the Region Lord?
In regards to the Region Lords, he can reveal that, like, what particular should I be going? What should I be particularly going for in terms of revealing information?
Well, what we have right now is when we look through the player's eyes, we know that we have, that they now have a lot of piece of what's going on. I'm going to say one half of the puzzle, because the finale we're building up to is between, a siege from the Region Lord. His army is going to siege this town where the Magi are. So we know the Region Lord is taxing people, but that's all we know at this point. And our players have came in, they've met the town people, and they know the Circle of Magi at this point are pretty bad dudes. So they're bad dudes. We need to establish now more about what the Region Lord's doing, more about his thing. Perhaps that he is lawful good, that he is investigating, that he does, kill this kind of stuff. Maybe the caravan workers trying to get back to him. We need to establish a little bit more of that piece.
All right, perhaps then he was. You'll have to give me a moment.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, as you're working on that, because again, what we want to really give is, at this point, the players have no real direct motivation of where they need to go from here. They know who's bad. They've pretty much probably made up that in their mind at this point, but they're in a town that they are hopelessly overpowered. So what we now need to start doing is directing them more towards these neutral powers that they can start, biting for power with.
Perhaps the Regional Lord had someone come talk with the merchant the day before they ended up moving the merchandise to that town, mentioning how he would like to gather well, the region, maybe not the Region Lord, but one of his underlings had sent someone in to gather more information on the artifact and perhaps bribe the merchant to maybe have the caravan go in a different direction, perhaps to have the merchandise end up in different hands.
Okay, but see, again, I don't feel we need to add any additional complexity to it. I think we have so much within the story all that we just keep weaving it back. What I could see something working well would be just the merchant at this point saying something to the lines of, because we need to establish the Regional Lord as at least a better guy, a neutral guy. While we were going through it, and because this is going to be a big conversation between them, where they're finding out a lot of the pieces of the story as far as why everything's happening the way it is, that he was attacked by the Magi. What is the he needs to tell us that the Region Lord is looking really closely at this area, that he's looking for these kind of signs of stuff, and that information needs to get to him, because that way he can bring down swift justice. And perhaps the caravan guys go out in the wild, the other merchants give him such a bad rap, because I think he's fair, and he's at least a lot better than these undead raising necromancers. So just to give sort of specific information as far as here's what this guy's place in the world is, and that's a good place to be motivated from there.
Maybe he could mention that the Region Lord had been investigating the reports of the recent grave disappearances.
Right, that's perfect.
And he had heard rumors that the Region Lord might have a better idea of what that's all about.
Okay. That's perfect, and that gives them then a direction to go. It gives them something to do. The recent thing. Okay, so that then takes us to the next thing. So that gives the players the next thing to do is that the region lord has more information. Yeah, so now from here, the PCs are going to be directed sort of in that way of the next most interesting thing is the region lord. We want to establish what's happening with him and how all of that's going. So what's going to happen from here is the players are going to start headed that direction. And again, we have some differences of there could be they could be located in a Magi stronghold. They could be in a bar. They could already be, in sort of the region lord's territory. So there's going to be some difference as far as what occurs here. But what we want to establish is to get that more piece of the information. So no matter what direction, whether it's a short trip, whether it's a long trip, the next thing that's going to be happening is the PCs are going to have a talk with this region lord. And somebody give me a name for this guy. We keep calling him what?
Let's go with, I was thinking of Walden.
Region Lord Walden. Okay. Yeah, so they're going to go have an actual talk with Walden.
Walden Watermarker?
Watermarker?
Yeah, why not?
I like it. I'll take it. I've always liked names with similar letters. Double W, yep. Okay, so they're going to talk with him, and he's going to tell them exactly his motivations. He's going to tell them that he suspects that the Circle of Magi are nothing but no good such and suches, that they've been usurping his authority, that they have been not paying his taxes, that they have been doing, this, that, and the other, and that as soon as he has a shred of evidence that they're the ones that are actually responsible for what people have been reporting, he is going to bring down righteous fire on their town. Okay. And then he's going to specifically ask the PCs if we feel the PCs need further motive to, start moving toward this investigation. To go get him evidence that this is what they're doing. Bring him something specific that they are raising the dead, that we know. Because what they're going to report to him is, what happened in the bar. There's a couple cultists that they killed off, but it's easy for the Circle to deny it. They want evidence against the Circle. Okay. And if they can bring that evidence, then he will bring that righteous justice. We also want to establish that he is not necessarily the best guy. He's not a good guy. He's a neutral force. And that he is going to bring, sword to everything, and he very much wants to do this to reestablish his power. And that keeps him out of good guy territory. Yeah. Okay. So they're going to go and have this talk with him and get that. So that takes us into our finale of the second play section, and we are back to CM. So after we have this conversation, they're going to sort of have a renewed, direction to go against the Magi. And again, thinking of our act of our structure, the PCs, things are going right. We found Magi, we fought and killed. We found the Carrigan guy, we got the information. We talked to the region lord, he will provide us backup if we want to bring fire against this town. What's the next thing to happen?
Well, I was thinking that it could either be, like this finale here, would it be the peak of the PCs getting it right, or would it be start sliding down into the villains starting to...
We kind of want this to be a peak.
A peak? Okay. Yep. So, their renewed investigation, they hear about some kind of nightly procession from the Magi, some kind of weird chanting that some people hear, and they think it's just Magi business, go so forth. So the excuse me, the PCs lie in wait, hoping to catch this Magi procession, and what they see is undead zombies, Walking Dead, and they're being escorted by Magi. and they could be recognized as cultists, as it were. And the zombies aren't attacking or anything. They're just proceeding through town as if, this is a everyday happenstance, but no one's on the street because everyone's inside. And they see them being, taken away towards wherever the Magi mainly inhabit.
Okay, so they're going to see this massive procession, and I actually think, because again, the one way to weigh the army is the kid. So we definitely want the pupil involved in this, and he's raising an army presumably to take power. So he wants to go against the king. Or the region lord. I could very much see him marching this army in combat directly against the guards of the town, the region leaders, his men, and literally that they're going to take and make this fight happen, and that they're going to sort of sneak attack him at night, and the PCs have the opportunity to see what's happening before, and then we'll have a very large environment to play with how they want this battle to happen.
Yeah, it's a very good piece there. Yes.
And then that would be sort of the final one, and this is one that's a lot more difficult because you're going to give the PCs a lot of freedom in how they want to handle this battle situation. It's not going to be a cut and dry necessarily. The battle's going to happen here. What's going to happen is they're either going to come up with a plan, fight them in the town, maybe try and take down the Magi, and that they are going to fall and help weaken the army. Maybe they're just going to run back and tell the region leaders' men that this is what's coming, and that way they can prepare a force and just have straight up fight on a battlefield. You'll want to prepare probably one of those two, especially if you're using a system that has a lot of battle maps. You're going to want to prepare one or the other, and that way you are ready for what ends up happening, and not telling the PCs this is how this fight has to happen, but here's what's happening, here's what's going to happen, and give them the power to affect and overturn and win the battle. Because again, we want to have that battle won. We want to do it. And that's what we ultimately are going for, and that'll give a big, huge success at the end. So then that takes us to our third act. And now things start going bad for our PCs, and things start turning. So we had ended on a super high note with the end of Scene 4. We're now at Malak. Now we have just killed, we have won the battle, we have beaten the army. Now, what bad thing happened while we were fighting the army? What the villains do essentially while everyone else was distracted because the main villain wasn't there, he had to go and do something.
You said the main villain was not there, correct?
Not at the main battlefield, but he was somewhere else doing something to further his plans.
Remember what I had said about the assassination Brotherhood of Shadows guild? Remember what I had said about that whole process? Maybe someone important could be killed.
Okay, I like that idea.
Maybe not. I don't know. Possibly the Lord, that regional Lord we had just encountered, or maybe perhaps someone important in relation to the army. I
was going to say the advice doesn't directly apply to this, but more like the term the kill your darlings. If we want to establish that, there's no reason PCs or NPCs are just there to help better tell a story to PCs. I have no problem if we kill the region lord. Let's kill him. We have established his power. We've established his authority. We've established what his troops can do with combat. We don't need him anymore. We can absolutely kill him. It will show how powerful the enemy force is, and yet his troops will still, continue and have even more reason to be more ruthless with the town once they start the siege.
And also, I think I should just clear this up ahead of time, but I would assume the leader of the Magi is not aware of the Brotherhood of Shadows murdering this important person to him.
Right, and that's the dangerous thing about doing the wild card, as that I would definitely not suggest the wild card is the one who murders the region lord. Or wait, we have a name for him now, don't we? Walden. Watermaker, because it comes out of left field. We need to establish the villains. I call Act 3 the villains strike back, that they are coming back, that they are fighting, that they are now winning, and the PCs and what they are trying to do are losing. The villains' plan is moving forward, and we're going to sort of show how we do this without directly, making the PCs lose a fight. So the villains need to overtake, and I like the idea of sort of what you said, except instead of having the assassins do it, have the head villain kill the region lord. I think that's a great thing. It shows his power, it shows his deception, it shows his sneakiness. Have him kill the region lord.
Yeah, like the lead magi main villain kills the region lord, and I'm assuming there's more than one region lord for the sake of the story, but not actually as a part of the plot. So,
yes, and that's what we would assume, but is not directly to our plot. Now, while this is sort of what sets off the scene that we know this has happened, what we don't have is how are we showing the PCs that the villain kills Walden Watermaker? How did this come about? Because if the PCs were to physically see it happen, they're going to immediately try and kill the villain, and if the villain just runs, it's going to feel cheap. So they need to know it was him, but they can't do it. What kind of scene do we think that we can have that we could show that this has happened, but without putting the direct villain in front of their face?
Perhaps they find the Lord already dead.
Okay.
And he was killed through magical means upon an investigation of his body. Or perhaps something is missing.
I like that. And we might as well, we're villains, we want to establish a villain, we might as well make it gruesome. What's missing?
His brain?
I like it, because it still gives him a face to identify him, but it's something that he took.
Maybe there was it looked like it was kind of a scuffle too. Like maybe there are some dead zombies. No, not dead zombies. Because that wouldn't make sense with the main villain. Maybe there are some dead magi in the room as well. Like the region lord put up a good fight.
You make a good point. Why would there be why would there be a body left around a necromancer who can work on bringing these things back to life? What if Walter Watermaker comes back to life?
That too. And maybe some of the other dead people who were there.
Yeah, and maybe not even necessarily make it directly a social or directly a combat encounter, but this is a great what I call pseudo-combat encounter of, it's one zombie that they could easily overtake, but it's, a zombie that they probably don't want to directly kill. But it's he comes alive and he stumbles towards them and he's going to try and attack them. And then they could decide what they want to do because they could easily slay him, but it's Walden Watermaker. It was the one guy who could kind of give them power on their side, and he's so hapless in front of them. It's like, what can they do? So I like that. I like that the villain took his brain, turned him into a zombie. And then they have to decide ultimately, because they'll ultimately have to choose to kill him. And then, it's the, you have to kill a puppy. You're going to make the PCs kill something that never wanted to fight against them and that is incredibly weaker than them. So they are going to instinctively hate the person that made them do that, which is the villain.
Maybe he's not directly attacking them too. Maybe he's just now alive as a zombie.
I mean, you can do it that way. The problem, or I should say the good thing with going the other direction is if he's attacking them, it means they have to resolve the issue. They can't just leave him. It makes them take an action that they might not want to do.
Okay. And do we have to assume that the main villain was the one who turned him into a zombie at this point, or can we assume that he might not necessarily have? I mean, not from the player's perspective, but as from the GMing perspective.
From the GM perspective, we can do what we want. The big thing with this scene, though, is we haven't done a lot up until this point to establish the main villain's power, and we want to do that with the scene you created. And by doing, making him the one that turned and making him the one that took the brain, it makes them villainous, it makes them sadistic, it subconsciously made them do something they didn't want to do, and it demonstrated his power within the setting of the story.
Yeah, but
So,
I mean, like sort of as a fake out though. They think it's the main villain, but it was actually the side villain who pulled some last minute shit.
we can just I'll say when we get to a scene where we want to do that, we can discuss it. So for right now, though, we're going to keep moving forward because this is stretched on a little bit longer than expected, but we're gonna keep tracking on it, and if everyone just wants to sort of watch out on the chat log there. So we now get to the next scene of the story, which is mine. So the big combat has just happened. We just found out that Walter Watermaker, is dead and turned a zombie. The next thing that they're going to encounter is Walter Watermaker's troops are not happy at all. They are going to, his second in command is going to immediately launch an attack against the town and against the Circle of Magi. So when they immediately launch against the town and the Circle of Magi, this fight is going to go very poorly. Again, we are in Act 3. The villains are winning. It is the PCs are going to see this as, here's the troops. It's storming in, it's go time, and the villains have laid an ambush for them. They have essentially, it's going to be, as they come in, there's going to be more armed, more of these zombie troops that are underground, and they're literally just going to start grabbing soldiers and dragging them underground. And it's going to be a losing battle for the soldiers. The PCs can get involved as much as they can, but we will allow the PCs to continue beating the zombies that they're fighting, but it's going to be clear that where they're fighting, there's just going to be more zombies and more zombies and more zombies, and eventually the PCs will have to decide to leave the fight. Not because they're losing or anything like that, but because it's an unwinnable battle because they keep coming. So in the second scene, we are going to have, there's a zombie ambush. That's the Legion Lord charge. Okay, and that's going to be the next big combat scene. So then we get into the next scene of the story. Once this big thing has happened, we're going to start moving just about as quick as we can here to get this going. But we've done the big zombie ambush scene. So once again, the villains have sort of come out. We're back to CM. What's the next event sort of to happen from here?
So this is assuming that the PCs are perhaps observing the battle from afar to see what's going on because the soldiers are still trapped there. So the head of the Magi comes out, and he's rounded up the soldiers inside, but he's also rounded up a lot of civilians and people in the town. And he starts going through them one by one, and finally he picks someone seemingly at random, and that person gets hauled away. Not gets hauled away. He holds out, if I can call back to the magical MacGuffin that Malik used, he holds out this this item, and the PCs can't see exactly what's happening, but the person that he chooses is shaking violently and suddenly just collapses to the ground. And with that, the main head of the Magi stalks off, just leaves the body lying there, and the rest of the soldiers and townsfolk are kind of, taken away by the Magi and their zombie legion, as it were.
Okay, and what would be our PC tie-in? We need something good to engage them, because this is actually only going to be a 3-scene because we have a lot of big scenes that happen with this one, so there's actually not going to be a scene 4. What will be the big PC tie-in as this happening? They need to be able to get somewhere a little bit closer, a little bit more to what exactly is going on.
Well, the second in command for Walden's forces, he would be captured as well, so they would have to make the choice: do we go in and save some of those men to bring back out and reform and try to attack again, or do we just pull back and try to explain to the remaining forces back at Walden's main location that this and this happened, we need to rally together, bring in whatever forces we can and take down the Magi.
Okay, so he's going to take the second in command. Okay, and then what I see happening now, and now I think is actually a really good use for our little wild card, is we need to give them a little bit more information. They need to be told about a secret way, a tunnel, a something into the Circle of Magi's main area. A way that they can break into where the second command is being held and found that. And the idea of using the assassin skill actually works very, very good here. We'll sort of see at the very end when we tie him in how it won't come off as a Deus Ex Machina, because we'll have seen these people around before. We'll have seen what they're doing. So them to drop that they are an interested party in what's happening, or perhaps the merchant skill.
Yeah, perhaps
What do
merchant.
you think? I'll put it up to you. It's your scene that you're making. What is that they need a way to be like, here's how you can get in and get to where they are. How would they get that information, and what specifically would it be?
All right, well, real quick, Malik, what were you going to say? I wanted to hear your opinion on it.
Well, I was going to say is maybe perhaps the merchant that we've been talking to before has some other more shady connections to people that might know a thing or two about the town's underground networks and could potentially find information that leads inside the Magi stronghold.
Yes, because at this point, the Merchants Guild would be, aware of these events, and they would know that this is not good for business. So they could send him on, an order to help the PCs, however he can.
Which maybe connects him to the Brotherhood of Shadows, because this guy, again, I was assuming he'd be more of a shady sort of smuggler kind of guy. So he would have some of these deeper connections.
And that's perfect, and that gives us the conclusion of scene 3, and that takes us into our final act 4. Now, we have ran later than expected. Ha ha ha! We get talking too much and we get into stuff. So we are actually going to take one more break. This is going to end up being a 3-part video, and then we are going to come back. We are going to design our finale, and then we're going to incorporate our PCs into this story that we have made. So it will not be a full another hour, but there will be a little bit extra in a 3rd video. So please stay tuned for the exciting conclusion of our little conflict here.